Have you ever felt that students care more about disrupting the class than they do care about their grades? I'm going to give you 7 steps, 7 moves you can make to make your kids go from disruptive students into grade-making machines. So stick with me because I'm going to share exactly what I do to hold kids accountable and to help kids become all they were meant to be. As teachers, we want our students to succeed, but sometimes it just feels impossible to get them there. It seems like we're dealing more or less with behavior, lack of enthusiasm, and other factors versus them actually being focused on what they're going to do. In 21 years of teaching, I found this, that the key to classroom management, as well as getting best grades from students, is accountability. And that's what this video is all about. When students clearly see how their actions affect their grades, there's a transformation that happens in some of the students. Not all the students, I want to be honest with you. You still get some students that just don't put the effort in. But more often than not, when you hold students accountable and you show them how their actions translates into grades, you're going to see improvement across the board. Number 1 is I grade everything. I tell my students at the beginning of the year that I grade everything. And I tell them the story about how when I was a high schooler, I noticed a teacher just took my work and threw it in the trash, and I knew that all the effort I put into it was for nothing. It was discouraging, disheartening. And I tell my students, I never want to be that teacher, and I will never be that teacher. So if they put the effort in to do some work, I'm going to grade it. I'm going to give them credit for it. And I'm true to my word. I really do grade everything. Most teachers, I think probably at the end of the year, maybe at the end of the semester, have like 40 assignments. I have like 120 assignments at the end of the semester. Now, it might sound like a lot, it might sound overwhelming, but when you really understand this concept, it is far from that because I have systems put in place that make it easy to grade. But by grading everything, it holds kids accountable. They know that whatever they're doing is going to affect their grade. Maybe large, maybe small, but it's going to affect their grade. And just knowing that it's going to be graded, just knowing that I'm going to hold them accountable and that this is going on their grade, you see a change in their behavior. Now, some quick notes before I go on to number 2. Some little secrets here. When you grade everything, it doesn't have to be that you go through with a fine-tooth comb. Some things I do is I might do credit, no credit. So for example, if we're playing a game, Book It, I tell students, hey, if you're here participating, you get credit. Simple as that. And so I'll just quickly put the points in for the students that are here. Easy to go. Some people walk around with stamps. I don't, but you could just stamp things, credit, no credit. So that'd be an easy way to grade is credit, no credit. Another thing I do, and I'll show this up to you in a second here, is I have students grade their own work. I have students grade their own work, and then what happens is then I have a reliable student for the next period check the work to make sure it's right. And so I am not grading anything that day, and all I do is put the grades in. Honestly, my grading on average probably takes no more than, I would say, 15, 20 minutes a day. That is it. And I can awfully complete that during a class period. With that said, that goes straight into point number 2. And point number 2 is give students immediate feedback. So this is an example of what I do for my notes. At the end of my notes, I have students count their own points. Real fast, it's 1 point for each thing. 1 point for the title, essential question, no, basically 1 point for everything. And students count up their own points and they put the total at the top. But then here's the beautiful thing about it. Right before they leave, I put up their scores. So when students count their own points, they'll see what they got, and then they can look up here to see what grade they earn. And right away, before that period is over, they know they can see how their effort and their actions translates into a grade. Just by doing this, it holds kids accountable. So the second thing you want to do is give students immediate feedback. It could be something like this, could be something different, but the better you are at that, the better results you're going to see. The third thing I do is I give students a visual of how different things affect their grades. And I usually do this before we give them our first test. And I'll tell them this. I'll say, imagine this is your grade right here. All right, that is your grade. And I say most of you at this point in time have done everything. You've done all the work, you've done everything. And so this is a pie, and you have the pie completely filled out. And so right now, because you've done all the work, you have this pie completely filled out, you have 100% of it filled out, and your grade, 100% of grade, is an A+. And I say most of you have an A currently. And they can see it. All right, I did all my work and I have A. But I said, But your grade is not just made up of your classwork, it's also made up of your tests. And I said your tests count for 40%. And so I'll kind of just do this. And I'll say, all right, just so you know, the test we're going to take is going to greatly affect your grade. It's going to count for 40%. So most of you already have an A+. But once we put the test in, that's going to change the shape of the pie or how the pie is cut up. Now, all of you that have 100%, you're still going to have this part of the pie shaded in. This is the 60%. This is the classwork and the homework. But now you have a new section. This is the 40%, which is the tests. And I tell them, I said, if you fail the tests, you only get to shade in half of this. So now, your portion of the pie is 60 plus 60% plus about 20%, which means that your grade is going to go from an A down to a B minus C plus. Now with this visual, the intent is behind it is for them to better understand how the grade is actually calculated and also the impact the tests have. Because I think the biggest struggle I have with my students is not necessarily them doing the classwork, most of them do that, but is when they're on their own time at home is studying. And so I show this example to them with the hope that by seeing this, that they might actually take a second try at studying, that they might actually put a little bit more effort at home to hopefully study because they see how it greatly affects their grade. Now, to be honest with you, I still don't have that many students studying, but at least by doing this, I might have a few more, and at least students have an understanding how their grade is calculated and how tests affect their grade. But I draw a chart or a pie graph for that. The fourth thing I do is I have conversations, real conversations with my students about their grades. And the first thing I let my students know, and I kind of do this at the beginning of the year, I really don't care what grade you have. I'd love to see you all do great and everything else. But you, as a person, your value is not based upon your grade. I want to see you do good, I want to see good grades, but everything else. But your value is not based upon your grade. But what I do value more than anything else is your character, who you are as a person. And so what will happen is throughout the year, I will basically print out the list of students I have and their grades they have. And then any students that have a D or F, I will check in with them periodically, probably about once every 2 weeks, usually after a test. And I'll check in with them. And then what I will ask them, I used to ask them this question: what grade do you want in your class? Think about that. If you're a teacher and you ask that question to students, what answer are you going to get? A or B? That's usually what you get, right? But I frame it differently, and I say this. I said, be honest with me. Once again, whatever grade you want, it's 100% up to you. My goal is to help you achieve your goal, whatever that is. And so I frame the question this way. Instead of saying, what grade do you want in class? I say, what is the lowest grade you can get and be happy with? One more time. What is the lowest grade you can get and be happy with? And by phrasing that question that way, I get an honest answer. Usually they'll say, a C or a B. And I go, well, why a C? Why not a D? And they'll go, well, because I still want to pass the class. And I tell them, well, you know, if you get a D, you pass the class. And they're like, oh, all right, a D. I said, why not an F? They're like, oh, because I get in trouble for Fs. I said, okay, so a D it is? They go, D it is. I said, awesome. And so once again, I go through my Fs and my Ds, and I have those conversations with them. And I tell my students, as long as you're where you want to be at, you're not going to get any pressure from me. You know, my goal is to help you. If you tell me you want an F, then, you know, I will encourage you, but I'm not going to pressure you. But if you tell me you want a B, and then you're getting a D or F, yeah, we need to have a conversation to see what we can do to bring the grade, that grade up. So the other part of it is those honest conversations and that verbiage. I'm telling you, just a little change on the wording, you get the true answer from students. Number 5 is my snowman analogy. That sounds kind of weird, but I tell the same story over and over, and it's the best way I can try to demonstrate to the kids or give the kids a visual of how their grades are calculated. And I tell them this story of this. I tell them, you know, when my kids were younger, we used to go to the snow, we used to build snowman, and we would get some snow, a small little ball of snow. We kind of scoop it up and make a small little ball of snow. I said, how hard is that? And the answer is not hard at all. I said, you're right. And then what would happen if we want to make a snowman? So what we do from there is we get a little bit more snow and make it a little bit bigger. And then we want to make it bigger and bigger. And so we take the snow, we kind of roll it around. I said it gets to a point where the snowball gets so big that it gets hard to move around. That's usually when we give up, right? Me and my family. But I tell them, the snowball, it gets to a point where it's so big, it's hard to move around. And I tell them, that is your grade. That is how your grade is calculated. When your grade is, when you got one assignment, and then you do the next assignment, since your grade is only one assignment, it's a small snowball, it's easy to move your grade around to manipulate it, to go from a bad grade to a good grade, or even a good grade to a bad grade. But I said, as you add more assignments on to that snowball gets bigger and bigger. And the more assignments we have, the harder it is to move your grade. And I usually will share this with the students about a quarter way into the class. Usually around quarter one, I'll start sharing this with them, because by then we have enough assignments. And I tell them, right now, your snowball, it's about so big, and you can still change it. With putting some extra effort in, you can move your grade to where you want it to be at. But if you wait another week, 2 or 3, it's going to be very hard to move that grade. And if you have a D and you want to get to the A, it's going to be nearly impossible. So I tell them, now is the time to change your habits. Now is the time to change it before that snowball gets too big and gets too hard to move around. So I put on there, with that analogy, I stress the importance of acting now. The 6th thing I do is I always give students a chance to bring their grade up. Now, I'm a firm believer in not making it easier. How I say this? Let me put it this way. If you choose not to do your work in your class, I tell the students you can make up those missing assignments, make up those missing points by doing, I tell them, extra credit. But I always make sure that the work for the extra credit is harder or takes more effort than the actual work in class. Because it's not fair to the students that put the work in when you need them to put the work in. And so the 6th thing is always give students the opportunity to improve their grade. Always give them that opportunity. Now, from my personal experience, you're going to give the opportunity to all your students, but only a handful are actually going to take the opportunity. But in my opinion, the handful that take it deserve it because they are putting the extra effort in. So the 6th thing is, the 6th recommendation I have is, always give students the opportunity to improve their grade. That could be, in my case, extra credit. That could be a retake on the test, or it could be a multitude of different things. But you want to have that available for students. And by doing that, you're going to see more effort, because without that, you're going to see students get discouraged, and without the other chance of possible of a hope, you're going to see them give up altogether. And the 7th and the final thing is communicate with parents. Now, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide how much communication, but this is another powerful tool, because if you and the parents are on the same page, and more often than not, parents want their students to do well, but if you and the parents are on the same page regarding students' grades, then not only are you encouraging them, or you telling them how to get the grade up, so are their parents. And based upon you two working together, you're going to see huge results. So there you go. There you have it. 7 moves, 7 steps you can do to turn your students into grade-making machines. And keep in mind, these work because you're holding students accountable. So as long as you hold students accountable, you use these techniques, I promise you, you are going to see a difference.